I think in terms of working with PMM, especially when you're writing content, if you are the writer of the content, ask to shadow. There's just something about hearing it in the voice of the customer. If you are the person writing the content, that's going to make it that much more human, that much more personalized. It will likely radically evolve how you think about writing the content, structuring the content, and even the format in which you present it sometimes.
Hey everyone, I'm Joanna Bowser and I'm the Director of Marketing at ClearVoice. Welcome to the ClearVoice mic, Marketers in Conversation. Today I'm passing the mic to Marla Woodward, the Director of Product Marketing at Dojo. Let's jump in and see where the conversation takes us. Welcome, Marla. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Joanna. Excited to have a chat today.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to hear about your approach to product marketing because when I was reading your bio, the sort of your approach seems to cover other areas. But before we dive into that, I want to hear a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the company that you work with right now, but just from you instead of me giving that long preamble intro.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in marketing and or product roles for the last 15 plus years, and I've I've literally done almost every aspect of product marketing in some way, shape, or form, whether it's being a sort of sales development rep when I was working at Disney, or whether it was actually getting into the wonderful world of Cisco and working on both the products and the product marketing side. So done a little bit of everything. And I would say, just in terms of what I do at this point, it's taking all the pieces of product marketing and looking at the bigger GTM motion that companies are trying to put together, right? Are you marketing led? Are you sales led? Are you product led? How do you connect with your customer? What are your channels? And how do we either optimize and better operationalize that route to market, as well as do we have messaging and storytelling that's going to actually land what the product is once you get in front of them?
Sure. And I think your journey to your current position is interesting, right? Because you're an American living in London, if I'm not mistaken. And so, tell me a little bit about that, because and that choice to go to Oxford to get your MBA.
So when I worked at a company called Amway, which is a very large global direct selling company for 7 years. And the last role I had there was really what made me think, you know what, maybe an international education is the way. I did brand positioning and messaging consulting across 13 different markets. So Asia Pacific, Greater China, Europe, North America. And as I was doing that, I was like, there are so many similarities and yet so many differences. These people approach business differently. They think about systems differently. And I grew up in the US education system, US University, Michigan State. And when it came to doing a master's, well, one, I was a bit later in my career, and Europe does 1 year MBAs, whereas the US does 2. So I went, you know what? Let's just apply to Hogwarts. Let's see what happens.
Right.
As it happens, yep, my owl came about 14 years late, but it came. And so when you get an invite to Hogwarts, you go. So my husband, myself, and the dog completely uprooted. And 8 years later, we were still in the United Kingdom. I'm still in the tech scene. And it's been a really great learning journey to seeing how different markets and different companies approach growth.
That's really cool. I'm curious from your just sort of experience as a product marketing leader, how you sort of tackle the entire marketing motion through your lens, and what does that look like?
So there's maybe a good way to break this down. There's a couple things I've observed, and I think if you understand the context and the background I have, it makes sense why we're doing what we're doing. With product marketing, I've noticed there seem to be two very distinct functions that exist. There is what I would call the head office function, which is the more strategic branch of the discipline. You sit where the product decisions are made. You sit where a lot of future roadmap and development decisions get made. So the voice of customer, the market data you can bring to that conversation has a lot more influence, and you have to really think through market dynamics and trade-offs and choices and ROI on like tech investment. But then there's this also, these global companies have a lot of regional offices. So Europe is very much known for this. There's a very specific type of product marketer that you will often find in Europe that can handle localization, customization, messaging, and positioning in different markets in a way that some of the head office folk really can't. So for me right now, and what I like to focus on is more the former. So I've intentionally I've gone with either startups or scale ups that are the head office because I really like to try and get my hands on as many levers as I can to try and really, from where I sit, help the business drive growth, really be a partner in growth. There's lots of different ways this could fall, but that's where I'm sitting currently.
Sure. And I'm curious because, we're increasingly in a world where there's not siloism across the marketing functions, right? Growth, product, et cetera. I'm curious over the course of your career, how you've seen those barriers break down across function. And if there's any sort of like specific examples you want to share, but just like what's that look like over the past 10, 15 years for you?
What I've noticed the most, so just for context, my career, I've done startups, I'm now sitting in a scale up, and I've done large corporates. And almost, I think the growth phase of the company can often dictate specifically what product marketing is asked to do. But then that will have knock on implications for how you set up your marketing function and your marketing motion within that company. Recent examples, if you're like the startup, scale up space, really like more early on in that journey, product marketing often gets asked to wear a lot of hats. Sometimes you don't have sales enablement, you'll pick that up. Sometimes there actually isn't somebody writing content, you'll write the content for your product. Yeah. Right? There's not as much specialism, so you tend to wear a lot more hats, and because there's so much you could do, you have to be really intentional and strategic about what you're doing and the ROI you expect it to bring. Then when you get into scale ups, I find we start specializing a bit. We start, as we are trying to drive that growth, we want somebody accountable to leads. Not you just helping do leads, but we need somebody who really is driving that growth motion, who is funneling leads into sales, who is qualifying them, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you do get a little bit more like, again, as you're scaling, like the different channels, and like there is channel expertise that comes in the growth side that maybe product doesn't have. Mm-hmm. But they still need to know like what they should be communicating over, right? Like there's still like, you have to have some fluency, even if you're not the subject matter expert at, let's say, paid, you still need to have enough fluency to say, okay, I know what I need to push your way.
Exactly. I need to know that the paid guys really need to focus on pain. They're trying to activate need. They're higher up in the funnel. They need to focus on the messaging that is activating the need in the first place, whereas either a sales team or even the website or the product itself is more focused on, let me show you the value of this so that you either want to buy the paid subscription or you want to convert and get the subscription in the first place.
Sure. So tell me, like, again, when you're thinking about product messaging and sort of the funnel, how does your brain kind of break it down of like what you're pushing where and how you approach them from top all the way through to the lowest of the bottom of the funnel, the sale?
So for me, it always starts with the customer. I need to know who I'm talking to. What is their context? What is their world? We'll, to the extent we can, we'll listen to sales calls. We'll go on go-sees. I'll try and go see stuff in life, even with customers using the product, as well as prospects we haven't currently got. Once I've got that, the simple messaging framework that for a single product, this gets different when you're doing solution sales, but if we keep it simple, so like single product, then you focus on pain, solution, and then features and reasons to believe that back up the major claims as to why you're the solution. Sure. So in terms of that messaging structure, to me, pain and maybe a little bit of solution, that's that sort of upper funnel, that awareness piece. Have we actually established need? Otherwise, they're going to go, oh, that's a cool solution, but I don't need to switch. It's a lot of industries are very passive. You are trying to create a compelling narrative and story to make them see, oh, I really do have a problem. I really should think about a better solution or a way to solve that for me. But if there's not enough pain to start with, doesn't matter what you do lower funnel, you won't even get them in.
Right. Yeah. It's like, hey, this is a really cool doodad or technical doodad, SaaS doodad. And you're like, but they're like, but I don't need that. So.
Well, like think about AI right now, right? Everyone's like, oh, you should be using AI use cases. And I'm like, yes, you should. And help me understand like specifically the pain I'm experiencing. Give me the specific use case. That's the hook. That's how you like really get people to make change, because change is hard. In a way, the funnel is change management. You're trying to get people to change behavior or do something different.
That's interesting. I've heard that before, but that's thank you for surfacing that in this conversation, that the funnel is actually change management. So if you understand a change management process from a messaging standpoint, you can actually win probably a little more easily, because you're almost helping them manage the change management for themselves when they're trying to sell internally. I think a lot about that too, is I think a lot about like the person we're talking to in the sales process, but I'm also like, who are they talking to internally, trying to convince or trying to like say, hey, we should go with ClearVoice as a solution. instead of one of our competitors or AI or something you're hiring internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what do they need? Like, what do those people need to know too? So I like kind of look at, we have like multiple, we have obviously our primary audience that will come in the door and say, like, I'm a hand raiser, but I'm like, they have audiences too. And how do we talk to them? So thinking through that change management across the organization is like a very cool way to sort of break it down
Mm-hmm.
and probably increase your close rate. So that's not even a marketing thing. It's like really a sales process thing as well, increasing the close rate.
Oh, completely. If you don't know that your main advocate is actually an IT persona, and that in order for them to get it over the line, they have to convince the CFO and they need a whole document on ROI, it doesn't matter. You'll have advocates all day long, but you'll be wondering why you're not closing at the end of the funnel.
Right. And I think marketing people know that, right? And salespeople know that. It's just really dialing in, like doing the work to dial that in and just taking the time to do that. Because it's kind of easy to be like, oh yeah. And also checking in on that every 6 months. Is it the same? Is it like the same lever?
Because the context, I'd say right now, especially with AI, but also the continued macro uncertainty, there is actually a lot of rapid change. And it's less predictable than it's been in the past. So you're absolutely right. That check-in is critical. Just keep it's not even just your customers, it's the context in which they're operating.
Right. Absolutely. Very cool. I love that. And I'm curious. So again, product marketing, right? How do you look at the world when there's no product releases or updates or new things to talk about? Like, how do you evolve what you do with something that's sort of like static because it's either completely mature or there's like development slowdowns and you're like, okay, we've got a while before our next push.
Yeah.
Like, how do you approach that?
So from my experience, there is actually always a way that PMM can support with driving growth. Obviously, with GTMs, we tend to lead because there's a lot of technical elements. It's new, it needs messaging, positioning, is it operationally ready? We'll have to look at all of those pieces. But when you're in life, there are often, I would call it larger proposition optimizations that you could do that you don't normally have time to do when you're running all the new releases and launches. So we've done this recently at Dojo, and for an American context, Dojo is a payments acquirer. Think of us kind of like Square. We are sort of a disruptor in the payment space, and actually in the UK, we are the number one SME payments acquirer at the moment, and we continue to grow at some pretty extreme scale of speed, with some international expansion as well. So when in this context, because we're scaling so fast, there's so much tweaking and optimization we can constantly make to the proposition. Where I always start with any of this work is lesson number one, I've learned the hard way. We cannot, whether it be marketing or sales, nobody actually gets to decide the biggest lever or the biggest change that needs to happen, but we need to align as a company. The one thing, if we did it, that would truly change the outcome. So as it so happened with the project we did recently with Dojo, we're looking at, look, what are we trying to do? Are we driving acquisition? Are we increasing and monetizing in life? Or are we trying to retain? Like, really, what is the biggest commercial outcome we're trying to drive? When we agreed that it was acquisition, all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's talk about all the friction in our proposition. That's like an owned goal. There's so much stuff we've bundled together. So we've done a massive unbundling project. We've tried to map our proposition to the price elasticity of the market. Why do they have to only buy the premium product? Why can't there be an essential or a basic product? How could you just repackage the product that is to sell a full solution, not just a single product, but like the full proposition in a way that your different customer segments and audiences want to buy it?
Sure. That's really interesting. And do you find that so again, I don't know what the operating states are in this evolution, right? So it's like something's just coming to market versus it's very mature and you're now doing this sort of deconstruction work. Do you find that you have like this one's in stage 1, this one's in stage 5, where like you sort of have like multiple worlds of elements of your product going at the same time if you really have a big suite? So it's kind of tracking like and understanding what's at what stage so you can actually take the right actions in that stage.
So will look at it from what I'd call both product as well as sort of market life cycle. But starting from a product standpoint, I think we need to understand what we're actually taking to market so that we know what our ambition should be. If a product is new and it's not had a very rigorous beta or alpha phase, it's really very much an introduction. We're still trying to make sure, is the proposition right? The way that we would treat that is to just make sure the messaging's right, to understand if sales channels feel confident, do knowledge checks, do they really understand and know the content, making sure every step of the funnel is as optimized as it can be. Now, later on, when you get to there's the growth phase, that's when you're scaling. You're like, we've got the message, we've got the proposition, the sales teams know this, we just need more targets, more segments, and more stories, and then we can continue to scale. But then sometimes you reach maturity. This is where a lot of products that have been in market in mature industries, and you've sort of met feature parity and maybe even exceeded some of your competitors, this is where you got to start getting creative. Is it promos? Is it new product? Is it a new way of packaging it? Is it a different way of even selling it? And a lot of the answers to which should I do, I find often come from the context of the industry you're in, the behaviors of your buyers, and if anything is changing or not changing. And it's kind of like the 4 Ps of marketing. Do you have the right product? Do you have the right price? Have we got placement sorted? And are we promoting it in a way that's differentiated, unique, and communicates the value of the thing?
Right. Yeah. Those 4 Ps I love it. You learn them in Marketing 101.
You never leave.
And they never leave you. It's like it's like the fundamentals. It's like if you're lost, go back to those. What's out.
I add to them now. Like in different companies, I'm like, it should be product and customer, because if I don't have an ICP, what good is the product? But right. The 4 Ps. I mean, it's alliteration. It's classic. It has stuck for a reason.
Exactly. So, as the world sort of changes and continues to evolve, and we can answer this from a startup or scale up perspective, but how do you see product marketing teams growing or changing, just sort of as the marketing function overall changes?
So that's interesting, right? I was having this reflection with a couple of friends recently, especially in tech. I think marketing as a concept really came from CPG, and you had your classic brand marketers, and like marketing really drove the motion and the decisions and was really connected to the customer. In tech, we seem to be going through this wave of, oh, no, it's not marketing, it's growth. Because everyone's it's just a rebranding of the same thing. But we are now calling it growth because instead of looking at and analyzing the market, we're more focused on driving numbers and driving, increase in sales volumes. So that's one change I am seeing, is I'm like, is this just a way for tech to be different and rebrand what is effectively the same thing? I almost worry it waters it down a bit, but that's an opinion of one. Because I mean, really, classic marketing is: do you understand the market? Do you understand the customer? And then, are you helping the business go to market in a way that's going to connect the customer with the product they want through the channels that are easiest to reach them through?
Right. I know I talked to some people that they think the marketers are like they equate marketing to creative versus marketing to revenue, right? I'm like, and I know that marketers are championing, hey, we're revenue, like tie us in. But I definitely still come across executives, even young executives. It's not like it's like it's the old fuddy duddies. I'm like, oh man, like you're a little young to be saying that marketing is just the creative people. Like, yes, we are creative, but
I find this especially in sales-led motions. I think that's where it gets tricky, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Like, who closes? What is attribution? Marketing always struggles with attribution when it comes to B2B, and that's normally a sales motion. But if it isn't a marketing-led motion or a product-led motion, the conversations tend to be a little bit different.
That's fair. And what have you seen because B2B, I'm in B2B, so like it's that attribution is always kind of a fuzzy, dark, right? And which actually the way ClearVoice has set up our motion is great, because it's not as we're not like jockeying for attribution. We're one revenue motion and we're all working toward revenue. And so that shift in our world really made a difference. On the product led or the marketing led, tell me a little bit about how like it's different than that sort of sales led B2B world. Like, how does that look different in your experience?
So I'll talk more about motion. I've worked across B2B and B2C, and interestingly, more of my B2C has been, there's been a mix of actually sales-led and marketing-led. So there's a bit of a difference. E-com's been its own beast. The nuances, as I see it, is when you're marketing-led, it's all about who closes. That seems to be where the revenue is attributed at the end of the day. So when you can self-close, right? I even think of some of our competitors right now in the payment space, because I'm currently in fintech as a space. If you look at the likes of Square or the likes of SumUp, they will do a lot of marketing-led motion, especially with smaller size customers. It reduces their cost of acquisition, which is great. And I think that's where the marketing teams really do get to drive a bit more of the decision making and are seen as contributing more to the revenue. Now, don't get me wrong, these guys also have sales arms. And in other companies that have traditionally been more sales led, marketing obviously has to bring a certain level of leads and a certain quality of leads.
Sure.
But then how do you really get measured on the revenue? Because the sales team does the close. I think
Right.
that's where it often does get a little bit more challenging to get them to see you as a full contributor. Everyone wants leads though, which is great. But then you're more classed with like the business development reps and the BDRs of the world, or the SDRs, and you're upper funnel, but they're the close.
Yeah. And by the way, like that's why we have pushed our metrics further down the funnel now. Like we look at the SQL and how many SQLs became opportunities versus just like because I'm like I can give you 10,000 MQLs.
Yeah. But
Who
are they
cares if they're not meeting with their salespeople? Like I was like, I'd rather have one SQL that closes $100,000 deal. That's a bigger win, at least in my book, right? Because but anyway, so I'm curious, you've mentioned AI a few times, and I'm wondering how you're using AI and other like automations and agentic processes to really disrupt what you're doing internally, or that you've seen sort of your colleagues and peers do as well that have really kind of made your socks roll up and down, as we would say here in the South.
so? I'll be completely honest because I think there's a little. I feel like when I read LinkedIn, everyone's doing this already. Everyone's got this unlocked. Everyone's figured it out. We've played with a lot of stuff internally. We found a couple of use cases that we do think work well. And I actually just got off a call with a good friend of mine who's also in the product marketing space, more in like the developer tools world, who had a couple of things I'm definitely going to be trying after this call. But on the whole, bar using it for like light touch analysis or for sort of messaging refinement or a bit of sort of competitive data scraping, like great for competitive intel. That is one thing we want to build and haven't yet, is an agentic workflow that specifically goes out, scrapes competitor sites, brings regular data, and then aggregates a summary of the major changes we're seeing across our competitors. Right now, that takes us at least 2-3 days of work. That could
Sure.
be done with an algorithm in about 20 minutes. But the danger with all of this, the more I read about it, is the more you let agents run on their own, you have to like constantly keep an eye on them. You
Yeah.
have to constantly check the quality. It's not at a place where, unless you've been super explicit, like a one off job, totally there.
Right.
Ongoing and recurring, it still requires a bit of oversight, but that's a mental shift. Instead of me having to be the person that does all of the deep market competitive intel, I have to keep an eye on the algorithm and make sure it's doing it the way that I want it doing it.
Right. I think because I talked to somebody else about this, where that one of the challenges I've seen with AI is that you're no longer at the source of what is happening. So like you don't like if you don't do you just get the analysis output. Like you don't understand. Not that I mean we understand the frameworks because we've been doing it ourselves, but especially younger marketers don't have a lot of reps of doing it yourselves. Now you don't understand why it works. My husband and I talk about this too. Like there's a certain like place in the generation growth where like the millennials they were both working in DOS computers when we were very young, and then also now are on iPhones. So we like understand the hardware better than like even younger generations who have always just had it just works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's something to that too, where it's like, hey, like yeah, you can use AI to develop messaging, but if you don't understand why it's saying that, like you can't really like be accountable for it then and understand why it's working or not working.
AI is great if you are good at critical thinking. That is probably the skill of the future. And you're absolutely right. I've read so many studies and even spoken to other product leaders who have said, my senior engineers are now twice as productive if
Right.
they have AI write code. They have pattern recognition, they can
Mhm.
think critically, and they can spot errors and make changes on the fly, and it has doubled their productivity.
Sure.
In contrast, the junior engineers are 3 times less productive. They spend more time going on an Easter egg hunt trying to unpick the thing when actually they needed to learn the language in the first place before they could edit and deconstruct it.
Right.
And this
Yeah.
is going to be the challenge, I think, for people entering the workforce is, to a certain extent, you do need to know the language or the levers or the frameworks to be able to challenge it, because you have to all the time. Like you can, I've tried doing like some deep reports on market intel and tried to get it to like come up with these strategies. And sometimes I'll write a note back and go, so I think you made that bit up. They're like, oh yeah, I actually did.
Probably did.
That was a deal. I've had so many
100%.
friends tell me, check the sources. Like it will invent, it has learned from us. It will invent sources that are not
Yeah,
real.
especially when it feels cornered. I mean, I don't mean to talk about it like it's a person, but like it does the same thing. It has little like ghost hallucinations. It's very funny, but I
Mhm.
appreciate that, and I'm curious. I mean, so I happen to know that you're a mom. You've got young kids. They're probably not like playing with AI yet, but I'm sure there's a little bit for
Mhm.
you thinking about. Man, they're going to be growing up in this world where now they have access to this very powerful tool, but that may limit how they approach their knowledge gathering as they're growing. So I'm curious if you've kind of thought through that with, not to put you on the spot with like this huge philosophical question, but like, kind of thinking, I think about it through the lens of like training younger marketers, but you're training not future humans, you're training young humans, right?
Yeah,
So what
young
is that?
humans who are going to be future big humans. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So how do you look at that for yourself?
It, I think I'm very much like a principles thinker. For me,
Mm,
my observation is this tech is coming. In fact, we
sure.
can't avoid it. In fact, it's better to embrace it. If it's coming, what do you need to navigate it? It all comes back to critical thinking. So if that is the principle, I need to make sure my kids can think critically. What are the skills that need to then be learned in order to do this? As an interesting aside, my partner is also a teacher. And so we have a lot of conversations what this means for the education system, because a lot of our kids will go through the system as opposed to maybe be homeschooled or have more of a Montessori approach. And some of the best thinking I've heard on this so far is we just have to accept if you do homework, yeah, of course it's written by AI. The kid will have read it, but it's written by AI. It's almost like we're going back to the Socratic method. Great, you wrote a paper. I'd like you to now stand up and argue the counterpoint. You got to
Yeah.
do it now, here, no laptop, go. How do you structure an argument? How do you deconstruct the argument the AI just made? It's probably one of the few ways. It's almost like the more teaching will have to happen in the classroom if we want to think critically, because when you go home, they're just going to go online. Just accept
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is silly to think that like kids and, students aren't using
Yeah.
tools. I mean, it's just,
But
it's just so different than us. Like, we didn't have to go to the card catalog to like look up books. We could use our internet, however slow it was at the time to look things up online. And like, we had to learn what was real and what was an actually a good source. We had to do that
is
thinking.
Wikipedia a source? Is it? But now it cites its sources. So I remember initially they're like, don't use Wikipedia. It's not an official source. And now actually with people linking sources, kind of has
Yeah,
become the online dictionary.
absolutely. So it's kind of like I like to talk about that with the kind of the use of AI sort of big picture with as many people as possible, because I do think it's important for us to use the latest tools and like definitely like make ourselves faster, more efficient,
Mhm.
etc., but not lose the sort of heart of what we're doing. And sometimes marketing, yes, eventually you can use data to support your experiment, if you will, or sort of your thesis about what the messaging is and all of that. But like sometimes you just the first pass of messaging is a little bit of like, I think it's one of these three. Let's test. You know what I mean? Or let's have some conversations.
This is actually exactly what I was talking about before I got on this call. Was friend of mine was saying he's made custom GPTs for messaging. So what he's doing right now, though, so I went, okay, great, you've made a custom GPT for your product on messaging, but how did you build it? And he
Right.
said what's worked for them is he still writes the messaging house. He still does all the customer calls, all the visits. He still structures what he thinks the very clear messaging is, but as more data evolves, as a new competitor feature comes in, as the market landscape shifts, he can continue to feed this data into it and use it as a thought partner to how should we address this objection given this context? Knowing
Absolutely.
this product, how would you pitch this to this vertical or this buying center? And so what he said is he is still the source of knowledge for messaging, but the different permutations and how this is represented in a buying center in a different vertical, he can get to so much faster
Yeah.
by
Because it's
using
just
a
just like
GPT.
work through the information. I mean, it is like it's so different than if you're like, let's brainstorm together versus let me sit on a computer and like, ooh, I'm stuck. Like it's just it does help get you unstuck. I also love having it like I'm like, you're a grumpy version of my ICP who hasn't had lunch yet and like some coffee. I'm like, tell me how you feel about what this says. Like I like doing that kind of work too, because I'm like, it's hard for me to sort of take that step back sometimes of stuff I've written. So it's kind of just a helpful, just sort of like tool to say, real talk. Like,
Yeah.
tell me, you're this person now. How does this land for you? And it's
Hmm.
unlocking some things sometimes too. I still have to go back and rewrite, or I have to do that work to sort of implement, but it's quite humorous when I sort of give the persona different characteristics.
But it's
Uh,
that's messaging is really in some ways very much still a creative discipline. I know there's a science to it, but there's also an art. And having that real conversational type approach as opposed to the clinical and these are my benefits and my claims and my reasons to believe, making it conversational, that's where the real creativity is unlocked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm curious just a little bit more about you as a person, not as a product marketing leader. Tell me, I mean, I know you live in London, or, we've talked about you living in the UK, and I'm curious
Boy,
what
I
you
drink
guys,
a lot of tea.
a lot of tea. Yeah, we were talking about that before we hit record, of how you weren't a tea drinker before, but when you're
And
not
now,
living in a cloudy, damp place, you're like, I get it. But what else do you guys do? I mean, where do you spend your time? What do you guys do outside of work, you and your partner?
so right now we're in that young kids phase of life. So we're trying to figure out how do I still enjoy the things I enjoyed and or bring them along for the enjoyment, but also knowing you have two very tiny humans who, can only handle so much, get overstimulated, have the wiggles, don't sit still so great.
Right.
We will do a number of things. We'll do local stuff. So the local stuff is we live right by the Tottenham Marshes. So we will just go wander the marshes, go walk by the river, like free range children. Just let them loose, let them explore,
Yeah.
where they don't have to be told, no, don't touch that and don't sit there. And because this,
Right.
I mean, we live in London. Every time we go up to a crosswalk and my daughter's on her scooter, I'm like, and we're gonna stop at the corner. Because I don't know who's coming around that corner. It's not like growing up in the suburbs. So it's nice to give them some of that free time. Or I will say this, London is one of the greenest urban areas in Europe. There are so many parks. So many parks. Sometimes we'll just go from playground to playground. My favorite being, if you ever go to Hyde Park, the Princess Diana Memorial Playground today has a massive pirate ship in it. It's very cool.
Oh, fun.
So it's
That's
even as a tourist, if you have small children, take them to all of the Royal Park playgrounds. They are fantastic. So we'll do that. And honestly, we travel a lot, which I know really makes some parents nervous, but I will go stir crazy if I stay in one place for too long. So now my daughter understands why her bunny has to go through airport security. And now, exactly, we like if you set them up for success, it's totally fine. A lot of the airports in London have playgrounds. Didn't know this existed before
wow.
children.
I guess I wouldn't like. I'm not looking for that at this. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Neither was I, but they'll tuck them off in corners, and then yeah, we'll go everywhere. There's so many great low cost carriers over here. We'll go in Europe, we'll go in parts of the Middle East, we'll go wherever we can get a cheap ticket to.
Yeah, no, that's the thing that I was always jealous of my friends that lived in Europe, was just how easy it is to get to the other places. Like it's like a hop, skip, and a jump, even to like Thailand and things like that. Where we're here, it's just
Mm-hmm.
there's an additional 10 hours from where I live just to even get over to London. Or I just went to Paris and I was like, oh, I forgot how bad like awful these flights are. You're just like, you're on a plane forever.
And it's
Uh,
often red eye too when you go to Europe, which is just rough.
yeah. Do your parents come over a lot, or do you go back and forth with visits and things like that?
So we'll go back to the US a lot. We try and go back every August because one of the great things about Europe, though the UK is a little different, but all of my continental counterparts, a lot of work will slow down or shut down in August. So
Sure.
that's a great time to try and go home and see family. So take some holiday then, and then we'll do the Christmas visits. Folks have come over both times we've had. So we got the two kids; they've come over for both of those because we have extended parental leave here, which is fantastic, and I highly recommend, and shared parental. So I took 4 months. My partner took 4 months. It's been great. So yeah, we very much still stay connected with everyone back home. That's important to us. That's the thing we try and focus on with the kids. But yeah, for sure, it means a lot of flights. I've gotten really good at navigating Google Flights and Skyscanner.
Absolutely. And it sounds like your kids are going to be pros by the time they're like 10, which is really cool. So that's awesome. Well, I guess coming back to the marketing side, I'm curious what you would, so ClearVoice, our main audience really is content marketers, but everybody's a content marketer in marketing, I feel like, in different ways. Um, especially product marketing people. But I'm curious, any advice you would have for your content marketing counterparts when working with product marketing and how to
Mm,
really take advantage of the amazing information that product marketing has in the content side? Like, what are maybe two or three sort of tips or sort of like
mm.
approaches you might offer?
I interestingly had this conversation on an interview earlier. So I'm actually, we have a specific opening in PMM, but it's for someone who is very deep in content. And actually, I'm going to borrow from what the candidate said because I thought it was very apt. I think, in terms of working with PMM, especially when you're writing content, if you are the writer of the content, ask to shadow, ask to see the customers firsthand. PMM will do the best it can to give you video recordings, to write up personas, but there's just something about hearing it in the voice of the customer. If you are the person writing the content, that's going to make it that much more human, that much more personalized. So don't just take what they're feeding you. They're constantly going out and having customer comps. Ask to do a ride along, ask to go with them. It will likely radically evolve how you think about writing the content, structuring the content, and even the format in which you present it sometimes.
Sure. I do think there's a lost art of voice of the customer. Like, I think
Mm,
as we become more online and like less more digital, like it's just like people are like I don't want to talk to people on the phone. Like you're like, hold on. Humans are fine. Just go talk to your cousin. But he really getting again, sort of like from the horse's mouth, if you will, those experiences and those stories, I think is starting to be a lost art. And it's exciting that you're
yeah.
talking about, really encouraging pretty much
You've
any
got
marketer with content people to go do that.
you've got to get in the field. It's not even just the phone call, but if you have to take the phone call, it's better than nothing. I grew up with in the age of human-centered design. It was all the rage in the early 2000s, right? And if it's one thing I learned, there's what the customer says and there's what they do, and they are not the same thing.
Right.
There is
Yeah.
there is so much value to not just asking them a discussion guide question and having them self-report how they do things. We'll
Right.
watch how they do things
Right.
because it will. We run into this all the time, even with features. We'll do feature releases, and everyone all of a sudden is surprised when this release creates so much noise and frustration from customers. Because when you tested it in a clinical safe environment. You didn't
Right.
test it at the evening rush for dinner when they're trying to like do everything at scale, at volume, and then all of a sudden it breaks. That's when
Right.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else though? So voice of customer is kind of one, like don't just take products at, go into the field as well. Go talk to people
Mhm.
directly. Anything else for our content, your content counterparts?
I think for content, there's two other things that I would say just from these are more hypotheses on how I think the market is going to change, but things to maybe get ahead of and future proof yourself with. Because this was also the chat I was having with the content marketer this morning. Hey, so you're interested in PMN? Talk to me about it. Well, content's kind of a struggle right now. It feels like, right? Gen AI, can it just produce a bunch of content? Yeah, it can. So actually, your job may look slightly different. Certain
Sure.
things may get done faster or more easily with a platform. So understanding what is your value prop as the content marketer? What do you uniquely bring to the table versus what is your plan to scale your content? Maybe you do write the core piece, but then you can use software and AI to create different permutations. So that's a big trend, I think, is the AI one. The second one I would also say is buyer journeys are changing. Classic
Sure.
content, I do think, needs to shift. If you look at how you hear this all the time from, especially in sales led motions, the sales team's going, yeah, some of this classic collateral just isn't landing. Like some people are even telling me I don't even use a pitch deck anymore. Sometimes I just do the demo. Like I get straight into it, and I don't even do the whole we're the company and who we are, and they go straight into you have this problem. Let me show you the value. Like they get straight into the solution to the pain. And then maybe over time they'll back into, oh, by the way, so now that you realize there is pain, this is why you should do us versus others. It's the buyer journeys are changing, the expectations of buyers are changing. So what does that mean for your content? The format might change, the place in the funnel might change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk a lot about this at ClearVoice because ClearVoice was started as an SEO agency, and then needed writers to fulfill the SEO
Oh
work. So
yeah.
we're very written word forward.
Oh, And SEO in the face of
I
AI.
know. So it's been really interesting, our internal conversations about how the world of marketing has evolved and like what marketers need, and meeting them there. And that push pull has been, because people still need SEO content, like they still need long form pillars and things like that. But if I kind of joke about the Trivial Pursuit pie, and I'm like, we're kind of one pie, right? Like, or we were one pie. And I'm like, we need to have more pieces of the pie and how
Mm.
we think about content as far as like the value we're providing for marketers. And that was, it was a really helpful analogy internally. But I was like, we still need to figure out what we can really do well, because we're not a video agency. We're not going to go start doing that. But at the same time, like, what even of the video production can we help the marketer with? And like, really, so it's like even increasing our solution set value has been like an interesting conversation, because the market has changed so fast as far as like what content needs.
And now, I mean, look at Google. Is the game what is my rank on SEO, or is the game did I get referenced in the AI write up at the top of the page? How do I get link referenced?
Yeah, and that's too, that's very interesting. I'm also seeing like all this Reddit like stuff at the top of Google responses, and I'm like, I don't want your Reddit feedback, please. I mean, maybe on like my home remodel questions, but certainly not on my business questions. Like,
Yeah, fine.
please give.
Maybe Google needs to rethink the algorithm. We should send them the feedback.
Yeah, and look, it's a work in progress always. So, but anyways, well, I really thank you for providing so much value in this conversation. I know I learned a lot. I hope anybody that's watching has also taken copious amounts of notes and has lots of ideas to take back to their team. Is there any final sort of like mic drops you might put in for anybody listening?
Mm. I will say this for busy marketers that are really in it and are just full on at the moment. Everything needs to go back to why you're doing it and the outcome you're trying to achieve. It's so basic. I feel like this is the thing I'm reminding myself of, and we're talking a lot with the teams about, is go back to the why. Why are you writing the piece of content you're writing? Why are you running the GTM you're doing? What are you trying to get from it? If we
Sure.
don't align and agree there, you'll never know if what you produced really created impact. So
Sure.
start there. It's honestly, it's a back to basics thing. Just a
Yeah.
reminder. I know you're busy. If you took time to listen to this, congratulations. You actually got some time to reflect and think to yourself.
Right, exactly. If you've made it this far, but also go back to why, as you continue to reflect on everything. I love that. Thank you so much, Marla. Have a great. We're filming on a Friday, so have a great weekend. I hope that you enjoy the time with your family. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to connect with me today and share your knowledge on product marketing and beyond. So much appreciated.
And thanks for the reflection time, Joanna. I don't often get this either, so it's been an absolute pleasure. I've actually been enjoying
Absolutely. If you
watching
want
the
to continue
series
this
of these.
offline, just send me a message and we can meet on a Friday. Because it's very
Excellent.
too awesome.